When you're ready, bring your awareness forward. No hurries, no worries. It's nice to transition smoothly. Good Wednesday to you again. So on behalf of the Way of Compassion Foundation and Davi Nikent, the Center for Human Flourishing. It's a beautiful name. Yeah. The two organizations that host our talks just want to thank you for attending, both here in Carbondale and wherever you are out there. We are currently towards the end of a text, a really wonderful text of the 7-point mind training. And we've been working our way through it systematically, and we're kind of coming up on the end. The mind training text is a very special form of teaching. And with it, it really allows every moment of our life to become practice. You know, there's certain places and certain practices that really require an environment to be conducive. And with mind training, every environment is conducive. This is really a text about making every breath you take your path. And so in that way, it's really good for us busy working people. Now, your practice is right now. And it's not limited to sitting in a corner on a cushion with some incense or a little bell and a dorji. We get to have it with how we treat each other. And then we can really bring this busy life of ours and make that our fertile ground to really remove the suffering in our life and cultivate both merit and wisdom. Practice Dharma. So within this text, I was very fortunate to receive these teachings. I was reflecting on it this morning. It's been over 10 years. It's 2001. And for my teacher, Venerable Geshe Sultan Gelsen, he took a year and a half to do it. And so we've been rushing by his time frame. But to be able to sit here and receive these teachings and how much they've benefited my life, it's really deeply touched to have the opportunity to share it with all of you. So we've already gone through so many points. Now, just you may hear sometimes the slogans of mind training. You know, sometimes they talk about the 59 slogans. Well, essentially, the 7-point mind training is the 59 slogans. It's all the sub-points. You know, we talk about 7 points, and then you'll find that within this point, there's this point, and another point. And overall, there's 59 points that we pretty much study in here. They call them the 59 slogans. And the idea of having these slogans is if you learn the whole teaching, just remembering that one slogan unpacks, you know, all the knowledge and all of your understanding, realization, what you've learned, so you can bring that right into whatever's happening and where you're at on the path right then or in that moment. The 59 slogans, in a sense, are antidotes to mental afflictions that really are the source of so much suffering in our lives, literally all of our suffering. So it's kind of nice. They have, Tibetans have this really wonderful way of having the long version, the middle version, and the short version. Sometimes they have condensed versions. So they'll say, this text is the essence of the whole path, and the text is only like 10 pages. But if you want the commentary on that, well, that becomes about 2 volumes. If you want the commentary on that, you know. And so the Lamp of the Path to Enlightenment, for example, is one text. Actually, a shorter version is 3 principal paths. And then, yeah, Lamp of the Path. And then you can get this little book. And then the commentary on that is 3 volumes. And then the commentary on that is now, it's like 5 volumes, about this thick. So it unpacks. But if you get the full version, then when you come down to the essence, it can unlock all of this. You know, we get it. So that's the idea. So the idea is not that you just learn the slogans. The idea is that you get the whole teaching. And then that slogan is there to help you remember it. It's there. And some things you'll notice, you know, get a bit repetitive. And that's because we need it. We really need it, you know. we get here so many times and think, well, I know that, I've read that. And, we read that book. Well, I've read that book. Yeah, well, what's in the book? Then we struggle a bit. These teachings are things that we really want to have some realization from. We want to know them, and we need to keep bringing it to mind so that we can really gain these 3 wisdoms. 3 wisdoms. One is to receive a teaching. And we get those pretty well, right? We get a teaching. Wow, that was really good. I told you guys, I think last time before, someone who told me, that teaching you gave a couple months ago, it was exactly what I needed to hear. It was so good. It really helped me. And then he said, can you remember what it was on? Because I can't remember. I was sure hoping you could say it again or so recorded. And we laugh, but it's true, right? We get exactly, that was so helpful. And then it's gone. So that's which problem of the pot was that? Testing the crowd? The leaky pot. Yeah, right. So if we're students, we want to be a good vessel. So we want to be a pot that's open, a pot that's clean, and a pot that's not leaky. And so that's where these teachings coming up, they really help to really richen up until we get some nice realization of that. So first wisdom is hearing the teaching. Second wisdom is contemplating the teaching. Okay, I've heard this. Well, does it make sense though? Does this hold up? I test it. I contemplate it. I try to tear it apart a bit. Is that really true? And if I contemplate it enough, I'm going to gain a little deeper realization. I'm going to know it more, but it's also going to hold up. If it holds up to all my attacks, then I have more faith in it, and I have more understanding in it. And then the final piece is the wisdom of meditation, and where we can just sit there and meditate on what it is that we learn. And so we go from an intellectual understanding that may go in and out to a realization that's embodied in our life. So I call that the 3 wisdoms. So as we go through this, that's why it took my teacher a year and a half to get through this text, which is actually pretty short. Pretty short, but we unpack it and we visit it and we experience it and try it out. So we are on, I think, somewhere around 46 out of 59, and we're in the 7th point, and this one's called Cultivate the Absence of the 3 Degenerations. Cultivate the absence of 3 degenerations. That's a heck of a sentence, isn't it? The absence of the 3 degenerations. In other words, we don't want these things to degenerate. We don't want these things to wane in our life. So we want to be really solid about not letting these 3 ways that we can let our whole practice degenerate. So there's 3 ways that they happen. And number 1 is to lose faith in our teacher. So this happens a lot of times as we move on, and you're stuck with me. I'm not really so much of a teacher, but I've had the fortune to have some really wonderful, qualified teachers. And when they give the Dharma, and we're taught in a Tibetan point of view to really see them as the Buddha giving the Dharma, to really see their higher qualities, to have really faith. And so we talked earlier about these sort of 10 qualities that make up a really qualified teacher that we really develop faith in. And so sometimes, though, we might notice and focus on certain qualities, and we can let that kind of drift. Well, didn't seem that sharp that day, did he? And sometimes in this process, we really forget that we're mixing our own afflicted mind into these teachings that are coming. Because sometimes he might be saying something I don't want to hear, like a lot. We have this sort of sense a lot of times to look for teachings that resonate with us. You ever heard that? People say, wow, that teaching, that resonated with me. I like it. It resonates. Sometimes the teaching that we need the most is the one that does not resonate at all. Because that's what I need to look at. And so sometimes with our teachers, they might share something a bit gruff, or and sometimes that's really nice, skillful means. So we really want to know, and if we want to not let this become a degeneration, that means we want to find qualified teachers. We really want to kick the tires, look under the hood. We want to, before we take someone as a teacher, we want to really do due diligence and make sure they're qualified, make sure that they have the resources to be someone that you can depend upon. And if you can do that, you have a good foundation. It's really going to go a lot further in your practice. Because if we just jump in, which we do a lot, right? I told you last time, just when I was when I was wearing monk's robes, you'd be amazed where they'd let me talk. I'd be at universities, I'd be in all types of Dharma centers and everything. And the only qualification they really knew about me is, I had my monk's robes on. And monk's robes do not make you qualified, for the record. There's a lot more to it than that. And but we do, right? Well, there's someone, they're a monk, they must know what they're doing. And we really want to kick the tires. We want to look under the hood. And we want to make sure that they're ethical. We want to make sure they have these really good qualities of ethics, that they have some knowledge, some training, and that they're skillful in their approach. So there's 10 qualities you can look up. Very hard to find all 10. If you can find someone with 5 to 8, you're doing pretty good. I was fortunate. I really believe my teacher had all 10. Yeah, very fortunate. So we don't want this to happen when we think about teachers, and maybe we don't have the opportunity, like you're stuck with me, for example, right now. But to know that their teacher might have been really well qualified, that there's a lineage there. I just recently had the good fortune, I was just reflecting on my teacher, and I was very fortunate to be there during his passing. And if you really want to know qualified teachers, when they die, when their body passes, that's where all the secrets come out. Because they'll sit there and tell you, no, I'm just a simple monk. Yeah, that doesn't hold up when they pass. Because when they pass, that's when you find out. And so, in the case of my teacher, simple, humble monk, he went into the meditative state, his body passed away, and we were all there, but he stayed in a meditative state for another 3 days. The body didn't deteriorate, fresh and warm, and we do our prayers. And then 3 days later, when his consciousness left, suddenly, there's a double rainbow over the monastery. It was so big, it was actually on the LA Times front page. Just happened to be at that same moment. Just happened to be. And then to sit there and have all these people show up, it was amazing. We're doing a service on a day for him, and these people say, I haven't been here in years, but I had a dream, and Geshe told me to come. And they had no idea why they're coming, and this place is filled up. And then to be able to escort his holy body back to India, it took us 2 weeks. It took us 2 weeks, and his body was not embalmed. I mean, just that alone, to get a body on a plane internationally without embalming, we got special permission, and all that was an amazing experience. And then to take a 40-hour plane flight. We had 10 of us doing prayers 24 hours, and always on the same plane with this holy body. And then to get to India, and then to drive 12 hours across India. And we wind up at the monastery. None of this was planned, It just happened to be on New Year's Eve in Tibetan Losar. We pull up in just enough time across all of this planning to wind up at our monastery in India with, a couple thousand, probably closer to 3,000 monks lining the road. It's New Year's Eve. It's Losar, the transition period. And all the rituals are performed. We take his holy body out, and he still hasn't deteriorated, and he's still fresh. and he's kind of shrunk up. It's kind of how they do. And then we do the rituals and cremation, and this is all at New Year's, and seal it up for 5 days, and do prayers every day, and then open it, and then you see these special signs. And all this was there. You know, I got to see it with my own eyes. This was not, you know, I was there looking in. And so you get this faith. You get this faith because first it was founded on, I watched him. He treated every being the same, whether it was an animal, a bug, a child, any person. Didn't matter what, he treated them all the same. He looked at them, he attended to them. It was ethical that I could ever believe, and he was humble, and he had all these qualities. So I had a great deal of faith, and then his faith was showed up every single day. And when he gave teachings, very clear. And then my faith was rewarded at the end when I got to see, oh yeah, he had some accomplishments, some realization. And so I'm sharing all this just because in this sense that, you know, if we really want to progress in a path, if we really want to make meaning of this rare and precious life that we have, if you have something you can stick your feet into and grab roots into that you know you can depend on, it gets you through some really tough times. Because a lot of times we're just at the spiritual supermarket. You know, that resonates with me. Wow, I really like that. Well, this feels pretty good. And the stuff that doesn't feel good, well, I don't go there. But if we're going to make any progress in the path, we're going to have our ups and our downs. And if we're going to look at the root of suffering, it's here, and there's some stuff I don't want to look at. And there's going to be some stuff that comes up, and it's going to challenge our faith. So it's really nice to have something you can depend on in the past. So these 3 degenerations, first one is we start to lose that faith in our spiritual teachers. It can cause some problems in our path. So I want to really look at that. The second one, I don't think I need this for that, is enthusiasm for the mind training. So we've been studying mind training. We want to really maintain our enthusiasm for it. And it's interesting they talk about enthusiasm. It's almost more like, well, we talk about joyous effort. Joyous effort. Joyous effort in the Dharma and the practice. It's one of the perfections. Joyous effort. Well, you know, at first it's not really joyous effort. It's perseverance. It's perseverance. You know, things get a little tough and I don't want to do this. So I always think of that as initially being perseverance and ultimately becomes joyous effort, because when you do it, you're making progress and things get better. So the enthusiasm of the mind training to really remember that I have this opportunity of a path that's been tested for all of this time in a wave with so many people, and I can actually take my daily busy life and turn it into Dharma practice. It's pretty exciting when you put it that way. That everything I do can be cultivating merit and wisdom. And everyone I talk to is that opportunity. Something to get enthusiastic about. So we want to maintain that enthusiasm. The third one is this other degeneration. So enthusiasm, you know, we can pretty much lose that and then think, you know, I don't really want to do this today. And you can see where that's a real easy slip, but we really want to maintain this. And if we really call to mind its properties, that this gets us through everything that we do. I just had someone, you know, share a difficult time with me, and they were disappointed with how they handled it. And it's funny because we get disappointed. You know, I could have done better. Is that true? Could you have done better? Because I'm pretty sure you didn't go there and say, I'm going to screw this up. We really did what we could with what we had. And so I don't know that we could have done better. And I told her, no, you were successful. You made it through a difficult time. And I came and went, and you're still here. And you're practicing Dharma. It was very successful. So we tend to compare what happened with how I really thought I could have done it if I was an enlightened being versus how would I have done this a year ago. And find out, well, I handled this a lot better, right? A lot of progress. So actually we did quite well. So our mind doesn't always work there. So this piece of enthusiasm is really powerful when we start to have a more accurate look at how we're dealing with things. What happens sometimes is we start comparing ourselves with enlightened beings. You know, went to a Buddhist teaching. They taught me I should have compassion for all living beings. And then I think I'm going to walk out the door and have compassion for all living beings all the time. Good luck with that. May the force be with you. You're still a human being and you've got some mental afflictions. I think there's 84,000 or something they say. So we got to be where we are, and it's about progress. And we start there. In the first place, to have compassion is here so I can really be a benefit. I'm not going to help anyone if I'm beating myself up. So this enthusiasm is really important. And this third one, I want to look at how he phrased it. It's like it's kind of like a conscience, a consciousness to my practice. So I just want to see the way he's putting it here. A sense of consciousness with respect to these practices. So it's really about an indirected awareness of my practice. And a good analogy for this is when I'm out in the world, like right now, okay, I don't know how many people watching on the internet, and I have all of you, and I have the Buddha over my shoulder here. My Dharma practice is going to be pretty good. Right? I'm going to be pretty good. I'm thinking about all my teachers and friends that can be watching this, and you, and we're representing the Dharma. My practice can be really good. I'm alert to it. Now, when you're not here and I'm at home alone, how's my Dharma practice? Feet up, whatever, or let my guard down, and then I start talking bad about people or getting resentful, or all of a sudden my practice is gone. And but when we go to the prayer hall or we're out there with our neighbors where people are going to see us and stuff, my practice is I'm here. Outwardly with public and with others, my practice can be pretty strong. But when I close the door and I'm all by myself, I mean, there's some sayings, right? Character is what you do when nobody's looking, right? And that inward conscience of my practice and how I'm living my life, because what I think, say, and do is it's always creating. That's my karma. So how am I when there's no one to check up? How am I when nobody's looking? Am I attuned to harmful thoughts and activities? So we don't want to let our practice degenerate in that sense. You'll find it's kind of a common piece, close the door and nobody's looking, and then we let our mind run amok. There's another thing here that's similar, so I'm going to hold that analogy, but I have a pretty funny one. So we want to avoid these three degenerations. And now we want to become, the next point is really endowed with the three inseparables. The three inseparables. And this is something that it really just makes sense. So the three inseparables are body, speech, and mind. Okay? So my Dharma practice, I want it inseparable with my body, speech, and mind. In other words, what I do with my body, we really want to cultivate our Dharma practice. What I do with my speech, I want it to be cultivating Dharma practice. What I do with my thoughts, I want to really make sure that's Dharma practice, body, speech, and mind. Often they'll call it the three gates. The three gates. I'm guarding the gates. Sometimes they have you do a visualization, like the sword of Manjushri wisdom, at the body, speech, and mind, ready to cut through ignorance with the sword of wisdom, to not let these things be infiltrated, because this is where we run into a lot of trouble. we create karma with body, speech, and mind. So why don't we make good use of our body? And so with the body, our Dharma practice is doing things that are of benefit, doing things like coming to a Dharma talk, or doing virtuous activities that we do with our body and helping others. We in Tibetan traditions have a lot of practices like prostrations and things that you can purify that are physical, and they circumambulate and things that we can do with our body that can be really helpful, make offerings and feed people and do things like that. And we really want to make a point. And we have some new people here too. So we have the usual suspects here. And one thing that we really emphasize is that our Dharma practice is not limited to me sitting on a cushion doing my practice. It's not limited to me doing my prayers, right? It's not limited to when I'm studying a text. My Dharma practice is how I'm treating my neighbor. My Dharma practice is anything that I'm doing that is cultivating virtue and wisdom. Anything that I'm doing that's moving towards what we call genuine happiness, well-being, inner peace, the removal of suffering. Now, we can be doing that virtuously by helping someone. We can do that in so many ways. Then my Dharma practice is really about how I'm living my life. And if what I'm doing is with a mind of compassion and a mind of wisdom, really thinking about, is what I'm doing adding these negative karmic imprints, or is what I'm doing really purifying them and cultivating wisdom? And we can do that with how we attend to people. So we can use our body in ways that are virtuous. Our speech, traditionally they'll talk about that being prayers, and as we're doing our prayers. But again, this can also be the kind and skillful words that we use to help others. This is Dharma practice. And then mind, that's where we get in trouble. Because every action comes from the mind first. First there's a thought, then there's some words, or there's some physical actions. This is what we have to guard. There's a good quote by the Buddha that says, there's nothing as dangerous as a mind unguarded. The mind's a very dangerous neighborhood. You really shouldn't go there alone. It's treacherous. And by that, it's good to have a skillful guide when you go into the recesses of mind. Because our mind will tell us all kinds of things. The mind will lead us astray. The mind thinks a lot of things that have no bearing in reality. It cooks up resentments and frustrations and angers, and it judges and it separates. And so we really want to be mindful about what we're thinking. If I leave this unguarded, and the mind is just going to drag us around. It's just going to drag us around. So really to be able to cultivate and understand, am I dwelling on things in a grasping, ignorant, harmful way? Can I bring my mind to see things more clearly? To live in reality. It's not a real simple thing. If you can get your mind to live in reality, you're going to cut through a whole lot of suffering. The whole basic premise of suffering is the sense that anger, resentment, jealousy, any mental affliction that arises in the mind is dependent upon misperception. If your mind's seeing clearly, you won't have those. They can't exist. And there's these basic teachings that the world is, there's 3 marks of existence. Right? 3 marks of, if you live in this samsaric conditioned existence, there's 3 things that are true. Things are impermanent. They change all the time. They're impermanent. Everything outside of yourself is going to be unsatisfying. There's nothing that is going to provide any lasting happiness outside ourselves. There's nothing. I mean, we think we will, right? If I get the new job, I'll have it made. Good luck. Everything outside of ourselves can only provide a temporary stimulus-driven pleasure. And ultimately, it'll be unsatisfying. It's just the way of the world. We're all going to get old and we're all going to die. We get sick. Just by being human, we have the conditions to have cancer or leukemia or lose a leg, or we might live to be 80. But then that's as far as we live. And we get old and we deteriorate. The new car that is so wonderful also creates a lot of stress in our life when it doesn't start. It's broken down. The friends in our life that we love so much will leave us. Everything outside of ourselves, it's ultimately going to be unsatisfying. So we run into a lot of problems because we try to make things permanent that aren't permanent. Right? We really try to preserve stuff, people and things, the relationships and things in our lives. And we really try to preserve the plan that I have. You know what that's like? I had a plan. Yeah, and I can see it. And, you know, plans change. Things happen. Life happens. So things are impermanent. Ultimately, all this phenomena and things that we experience are unsatisfying. They're not going to provide you any lasting happiness. This life will come and it will go. And you won't be able to take any of it with you. But you know what you will take with you? How you lived your life. All the karmic imprints that we created, that goes with us. The house, the car, the relationship, the good job, all the praise or criticism, that comes and goes. What we carry with us from life to life is how we lived our life. Karmic imprints, the real essence of this precious life is what we're planting in our consciousness, how we live it. And we want to pay much more attention to that than how much money I have in the checkbook. That will come and go. How I live my life is what's relevant. And then the third mark of existence is this non-self. You know, and so these are the ways that we have misperception. Is we try to make things permanent that aren't permanent. We over-exaggerate the qualities of things in our life, that this is going to make me really happy. And we also exaggerate the opposite. This is going to make things really suck. And you know, a week later, it doesn't really matter. It just doesn't really matter. And then we grab onto the self-cherishing attitudes. We've talked about the real source of this suffering is the more that I see myself as independent, separate from you, and a non-changing, independent being, I'm going to create a whole lot of suffering because that doesn't exist. I am interdependent with you. My whole experience is relational with you. And whatever I think I am as John is different than 5 years ago, different than 10 years ago. It's going to be different tomorrow. It's changing all the time. And whatever I think about John, his qualities, there's nothing that doesn't change. There's nothing that isn't more than a stream of consciousness going from moment to moment. But I might get caught up in thinking I'm this kind of guy or I'm this kind of guy. And then those change. And we all change. And this sense of self that I see that's independent, separate from you, automatically creates suffering, rather than interdependent with you and dependent upon the causes and conditions of life and changing moment to moment. You won't find yourself when you look for yourself. It's kind of a fascinating concept. You won't find John. But there's a body here, and there's a mind that goes with it. But it's independence upon a lot of causes and conditions. And we get in a lot of suffering around that, right? Because here's some words that automatically apply to me thinking of myself as a non-changing, independent thing. Pride, jealousy, resentment, fear. Those all come from me feeling really strong about me being John. When I understand that this body will come and go, my consciousness moves on, and that how I experience life is dependent upon the karma and kleshas and the empty nature of reality, I'm not going to be so fearful. And I'll know that this physical body will come, and I'm on a path to enlightenment if I'm living virtuously. There's nothing to fear. There's nothing to grab onto. There's nothing to worry about. And there's nothing to have pride in. So anyway, those are 3 ways that we tend to create a lot of misperception. 3 marks of existence. And we try to really make an independent self. We tend to try to find happiness in all the wrong places. I'm really going to write a country song. And then looking for happiness in all the wrong places. There was that one, looking for love in all the wrong places. And really exaggerating the qualities of things outside of ourselves, like they can do so much more for us. But you all know that you can have the nicest house, the nicest car, the best relationship, and you, for some reason, can still get angry and depressed and frustrated. It's weird, isn't it? I mean, I don't have one, but one day I'll have a car with heated seats. And I could still be in a car with heated seats and still get angry. I don't understand. I just don't understand, you know?
It does not happen. Heated seats, you don't get angry.
I'm going to have to test that theory with the wisdom of contemplation, and then I'm going to have to meditate on those and see how it works.
So that's all I need for enlightenment? It's just a heated seat? It's that easy.
She didn't say enlightenment, she said no suffering.
No, I said no anger.
No anger, no anger. It eliminates anger.
But it only happens when you're in the heated seats.
And I assume it's cold outside, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because when you're in the heated seats in 100-degree weather, it can be problematic. Yeah. So, but we do. We sit there and we keep trying to line up all these circumstances so I can be happy. And the reality is we don't have any control of those circumstances, and your inner peace doesn't come from them anyway. So if we understand this, then this misperception, we really watch the mind. How about bringing my mind to life in a very clear way? In a way that's cultivating and watering the seeds of the life I want to live. We tend to water all the weeds, anger, resentment, jealousy, low self-esteem, depression, sadness, blah, blah, blah. And we don't water the flowers, loving kindness, compassion, wisdom, clarity. And so let's watch our mind and what are the seeds I'm watering? Instead of thinking about the one thing that's not good in my life, how about thinking about the incredible life I do have? And what about remembering that everything I think has an impact, and how I speak has an impact, and everything that I think, say, and do right now is creating my future, and it's also having an impact on you. And I can bring the mind of compassion and wisdom into all my actions. And I'm guarding body, speech, and mind. And there's this sort of, long list of things that we can avoid and things that we should do, and virtuous activity and non-virtuous activity. But how about a short, quick litmus test? Before you say or do something, simple question, is it beneficial? Chances are, if you're really asking yourself that, is this beneficial for myself and others? Is this the most beneficial thing to do in this situation? Whatever happens next is virtuous. We don't need to memorize a whole bunch of lists. We can really honestly take an assessment of this moment. What's the most beneficial thing to do for you and for me in this situation that's healthiest in the long term? And then whatever we do, chances are it'll be virtuous. So body, speech, and mind, inseparable. We really want to cultivate that with our Dharma practice. Because we don't want to get in the idea that, okay, I'm doing Dharma. We're at the Dharma Center tonight. And then I go home to the real world. Right? And, a little later, but it's a good spot for it now. And I've used the same. There's an old Lama who says, that, Westerners, we're kind of like, we go to a retreat or we go to a spiritual training or a teaching. He says it's like we take a shower and we're clear and we're clean. And then we walk out the door and jump in a mud pile. Because I don't take any of that with me. And then we get muddy. We notice we're all muddy. And you know what we do? Well, we go to take another shower. I go to a retreat or I go to a Dharma teaching or anything. I get all clean. And then I go back out and jump in the mud pile. And we kind of have a tendency of doing that. What we want to really realize is that as I leave here, my practice is really beginning. What we're doing here is just, putting gas in the tank so we can go do our practice. My analogy is I always think of it as I go to a retreat or I go to Dharma teaching. I've got my little bowl and the precious nectar of merit and wisdom, and I've got it. And I walk outside the door and I just fling it. And I wonder why it's empty, because I yell at somebody or get frustrated about it. And then I have I need to go get my cup, and go to a retreat, fill it all up. And I walk it. It's but I like that mud shower analogy. That's pretty good. So we really want to cultivate these 3 inseparables. And this one, it's a good, good. Always meditate on those who make you boil. So we can kind of guess what that means, right? But it's actually quite vague in the text. In the actual, he says here, the text of this 10th practice is obscure. So in trying to make sense of it in Tibetan, he was really thinking about what this really means, and it can mean a variety of things. But he was calling to mind that his teacher was Nawang Darje, incredible teacher. He said that, now this is the quality of a good teacher as opposed to me. He said that a very learned Lama would be able to give 10 or 15 justifiable interpretations of the same text. So a really good teacher can take a text, take it what's there, and can give 10 or 15 different justifiable, different versions of what that could be and how it could be interpreted. That's pretty amazing, So, and the point of it is that these really qualified teachers look at you and look at what you need to hear. And they give you the one that you need. So in this sense, though, the boil, we kind of go right back to meditate on the people that really drive us nuts, probably, right? But there's a richer piece to this that has this interpretation of meditate on the ones that you're closest to, that you spend a lot of time with. It's kind of an interesting dichotomy that we tend to be a lot better at our Dharma practice with people we don't know and spend a very little time with out there with strangers. And people that are close to us, we let it all down. And we just, that's the people we live with. That's our family or our work partners. And we let our Dharma practice down. We're not as mindful of our thoughts and how we're responding. But with strangers, we do much better. So in this sense, you'll also notice that the ones that you really are close to and spend a lot of time with, who can push your buttons better? Right? Who do we get most emotionally impacted over? People we're close to, right? Ultimately, when we do our practice, we want to cultivate compassion and connection to all beings and feel, equal. But, generally, we're not there yet. So the people that we are closest to, the people that we're invested with, we're going to have the ups and downs of emotions much higher. We're going to be happier. We're going to be sadder. We're going to be, more devastated. The more our connection is with them, and the people that we interact with daily are going to cause most of the friction and tendencies in our life. Work people, or people that neighbors that we don't get along with, or family members. My mom. She was great. My mom was. I really think towards the level of saying an amazing mom, incredible, raised 9 of us, went to school at night, went to church every day, feisty Irish woman. And she, she'd ask you to help with something. And, you'd go to help, like hang something up. And, then she's going to tell you how to do it. You're like, really? I would just get down, hand her the hammer, and go, would you like to do it, Mom? She'd okay. And then she'd leave. But, we had these practices, so but your moms, your family members, and those things like that, we can get a little challenged by it. So in this sense, we want to meditate on those that make us boil. Well, our emotions and things and mental afflictions are going to be much more elevated around people we're closer to. So the idea here is to really be much more mindful and practice more deeply with the people we have most interactions with. It's easy to do it with strangers. It can be a lot more challenging with people that we know. So to bring that in this context. And this is a good one to wrap up on because we have already touched on it. This one says, do not rely on other conditions. And this is really the gift of mind training. The lojong practice is all about that. You don't need outer conditions. There's a lot of practices, as I mentioned, that you really need very specific conditions. If you're going to, cultivate shamatha, meditative quiescence, well, you're not going to be able to do it in New York City. And with kids running down the halls like when we meditate, we can kind of relax and let that be. But if you're really going to, shut down all sense consciousness and cultivate, shamatha, you're going to need to go to a quiet place. You're going to create conditions. You're going to have to have done preliminary practices, and you're going to spend about 1.5 years, 2 years at about 15, 18 hours a day meditating quietly in a conducive environment. So you're going to need a very specific set of circumstances. There's a lot of other rituals and practices. You need very set circumstances. Here, in mind training, you don't need any of those. Our practice is right here, right now. Everything is practice. As a matter of fact, the more the kids yell or run down the hall when we're meditating, that's a better practice. Mm-hmm. Now I really get to work with my mind. Everything is practice. And the things that happen as challenging get to transform it, really allow us to work on our highest potentials. We don't rely on the outer circumstances. Inward is what we're working on with the mind, and everything is a condition for how I can improve the quality of my mind, cultivate my higher potentials, purify these tendencies and grasping. The real gift of this teaching is it's built for us in this busy Western world that we're in. That everything is practice, and we don't need outer quiet circumstances. As a matter of fact, the bumps in the road are where we get to grow. Now, we've talked about that before. When we're in that nice bubble and everything's good, everything's nice, we're not going to work very hard. And we're not going to grow very much. You know what drives people into rooms like this? Suffering. Right? We get here because we know there's some pain that doesn't need to be here. Things are hard. Things are challenging. I want to find some inner peace. We get here because of that. Everything becomes an opportunity for practice. I said something in here. I want to just make sure I thought I saw a piece in there. Okay, yeah. So he was saying there's no ground for procrastination in this practice. Yeah, just suck that one away. No ground for procrastination. You don't need to save up your money for a retreat. You don't need to create the right conditions. You're not going to do your practice when? Because it's right now. That's right now. And so that's really the gift of this. We don't really wait for those outer conditions. They're here all the time. When you're tired, irritated, challenged. That's the good stuff. That's the opportunity. And, you know, we have these incredible stories of these lamas, you know, that have been like tortured and imprisoned by Chinese, and, you know, and their biggest, you know, when asked, you know, the biggest threat was in prison, Lama would say, I almost got angry at the person torturing me. He knew that was a greater danger than getting tortured. He was watching his mind at that level, cultivating bodhicitta for the person torturing him. You know, and we kind of get frustrated because my cushion's a little rough. Not just so. You know, gotta get my zafu, you know, climate control and the incense. Our practice is right now. Our practice is watching my mind. Am I cultivating suffering, or am I cultivating virtue and wisdom? Am I practicing Dharma? And that can be done with how we show up every day. In everything we do. No procrastination. It's right here, right now. And the other beauty of that is you're always qualified. You're always qualified. Right now is a new moment. Whatever I just did before, I'm in a new moment now. And I'm ready for practice. Right here, right now. You already have what you need. It's obscured, it's messy, and it's dirty, and our job is to clear that away. Get that mud off. And we have an opportunity in every moment we're in to do that. We don't have to go for the big blessing. We don't have to go for the long retreat. We don't have to go for this. We have it in every moment. So we don't depend upon outer circumstances. Now he also goes on to say, however, if you have a choice, go for the good circumstances, conditions. In other words, if you do have a choice to have a nice conditioned environment, you know, to meditate, do that. This is not go find pain. Don't find challenge. Trust me, there's enough out there. It'll find you. So when you do have the choice, because having said that, if you have the choice, you know, choose something that's really going to support your practice. Be around people that support your practice and do the things that are healthy. But don't be dependent upon it, because everything's practice. All right. Okay, so we do have just a couple minutes. If anyone had a question or a comment before we wrap up. All right. Yes. What's your name?
Linda,
Hi, Linda.
what makes us so different from the Easterners that we have to take our shower and get all the mud off and then go back and shower again?
Mm-hmm.
What makes their practice so different, because it's part of their culture and they've been
Yeah.
doing it for hundreds, thousands of years?
One of my teachers, well, Alan Wallace, who wrote this book, he makes a very good distinction. He says there's much less distinction between the East and the West anymore. So we really want to stop thinking about it in terms of that. There's modernity, the modern world, because now, you know, Eastern cultures have cell phones and busy lives, and, you know, so we often think about this sort of tranquil Eastern kind of mindset. But actually, we're really comparing modern lifestyles, which is now infused. I mean, when I was at the monastery, monks have cell phones and, you know, doing all that stuff, and they have busy minds and activities too. So the difference in a modern world now is that with all the multitasking and all the constant distractions and the busyness of our lifestyles, our mind is swept up and constantly, compulsively drawing us away in distraction and fragmentation, and we're not able to really be here and focused. If you go back to, like, you know, well, there's still lots of Tibet that is untouched like that, still living, you know, with the yaks and very rural lifestyle where, you know, it takes days just to get anywhere. Your mind's going to be a lot calmer in those tranquil environments. And in ours, we have just so much technology, so much going on, and busyness of a mind that fragments it, that even though we get this, we lose it real fast. Our distraction happens real fast. Plus, there is, as you pointed out, this other philosophical view. Imagine being raised in a culture where your nature is pure. So if you're Buddhist and you're raised in a Buddhist country, you know you have Buddha nature. You know you're okay. You know that you have all the qualities of enlightenment, and that's what you're born with. And you know that, and you're coming to the world like that. And you know that karma exists, and what you think, say, and do makes a difference. And you're still a knucklehead. You still do harmful things. You still hurt, but you don't beat yourself up. They don't even have that sort of philosophy on guilt and shame like that, like we do. It doesn't even exist in their words. Okay, because there's a pure nature, and it's obscured with karma and kleshas, and that's the things we need to work on, but that's not me. See, we need to give ourselves self-compassion. Well, that self doesn't exist, right? It's okay to attack really harmful activities of body, speech, and mind because that's not me. That's the stuff that's preventing me from being me, from having free will and good positive potentials. So we get rid of that. So they have a different view there. So there is a different context. But now with the modern cultures, he makes a distinction. Really, in the modern world, it doesn't matter. They're running into the same types of self-esteem issues and different things now that we are, because the technology and the pace of life. You're welcome. Okay. All right then. Okay, well, before we do our dedication here, just want to point out we are co-hosted by Davi Nikent, Center for Human Flourishing. Eudaimonia, human flourishing. And there's a lot of activities. Rita came in here, set everything up, and so there's a lot of flyers and different activities that are going on. We're going to start hosting Mindful Mondays. So if you want to come and participate in a mindfulness meditation and a little practice every Monday here in Carbondale, 7:30, beginning
Next week.
well, pretty quick. Next week. And yeah, right here. So short meditation and just a mindfulness practice for the week. So if you're interested in that, come on by. And there's other flyers and stuff over there. All of you who tuned in as well, we really want to thank all of you. The Way of Compassion Foundation is a nonprofit foundation. So any offerings you make, again, the teachings are always offered freely. They're given freely to be of benefit. If you do want to make an offering, a dana or donation, it is nonprofit, and you can do it online at thewayofcompassion.org. But again, we offer them freely. And these webcasts now will be archived. So if you go to the Way of Compassion Foundation, by tomorrow, we'll have this up on the website. So if you find anything beneficial, then you can watch it later. And I hope something is beneficial. So let's go ahead and do a little dedication, dedicating the virtue and wisdom we've accumulated here today for the benefit of all beings. Let us dedicate the virtue and wisdom that we have accumulated both here today and throughout our lives, both individually and collectively. We dedicate this for the benefit of all beings. May all beings be free of suffering and find lasting happiness. And may we be able to use both the virtue and wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lives to purify our own minds, to cultivate our own highest potentials, to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. All right, well, we thank you all so much. May you all be well, be happy, and as usual, stay out of trouble. All right, be well.